Alumni from a Christian school are speaking out after administrators fired 2 staff members for the horrible crime of using pronouns. This is another example of how the war against trans people has broke conservative brains. The 2 employees, Reagan Zelaya and Shua Wilmot, were let go by Houghton University for using pronouns at the end of their work emails. The administrators at Houghton, which is it's basically affiliated with the conservative branch of the Methodist Church, asked Ms. Zelaya and Mr. Wilmot, 2 residence hall directors, to remove their pronouns, she, her, and he, him, from their email signatures, saying that they had violated a brand new policy. A policy. When they refused to do so, and I'm going to tell you their reasons, both valid. Both employees were fired just weeks before the end of the semester. So now, if you noticed, their names aren't exactly gendered. Reagan Zelaya and Shua Wilmot. Okay? So you don't know. Turns out they've been misgendered several times. Their names are not like Bob and Sue. I mean, generally, those are pretty gendered names unless you listen to Johnny Cash, Boy Named Sue. Anyway, that was one reason. People kept misgendering them in emails. And so they decided to put their pronouns there in order to prevent that from happening. Again, that's the whole reason, pretty much the whole reason why pronouns exist. Now, Reagan Zelaya is a cisgender woman. Shua Wilmot is cisgender male. That just means that they're not transgender. That's it. That means they're not trans. Assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. There it is. So aside from a very practical reason, and again, the reason that pronouns exist in the first place, they also wanted to be a little bit more inclusive. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Or at least there shouldn't have been. In fact, Mr. Wilmot said of his firing, quote, "I think it boils down to they want to be trans exclusive. And they want to communicate that to potential students and the parents of potential students. There's a professional piece to it, again, so that they don't get misgendered, the practical piece, and then there's also an inclusive piece. And I think that's the piece this institution doesn't want." In Ms. Zelaya's termination letter, she was told that she was fired as a result of, quote, "your refusal to remove pronouns in your email signature, as well as criticizing an administration decision to the student newspaper." There wasn't any more details about that. But again, here we have a situation where people did something that harms absolutely no one for a very practical reason. It makes very practical sense to use the pronouns. But that triggered the administrators so much because they hate trans people. Can't handle it. Can't handle it. Oh, you're using pronouns?
Can't let that happen.
Wow. Now, here's the thing, right? Houghton College is sort of an interesting case study, right? So obviously they're a religious school, and but they also have this weird history of like being more, at least less outwardly hostile to members of the LGBTQ plus community. What do I mean by that? Well, Houghton, who has about 1,000 students, had again been hostile, but less hostile. But since 2021, had closed a multicultural student center, had closed an environmental sustainability program, and had rescinded recognition of an on-campus LGBTQ club. Now, the club in question was closed after it declined to promote more conservative views on sex and gender. So basically, hate trans people. Now, they were still, again, not great on LGBTQIA plus issues because they're affiliated with the Wesleyan Church. Now, the Wesleyan Church teaches that, quote, "gender confusion and dysphoria are ultimately the manifestation of sin." So, the reason trans people exist is because of original sin. It also views adult gender nonconformity as a violation of the sanctity of human life. Now, the university itself, which is linked to that church, describes itself as solidly biblical and saying the teachings of the Wesleyan Church are central to everywhere on the campus. I got to ask you, though, if you're solidly biblical, where in the Bible does it say to hate trans people? I don't quite understand. Where did Jesus say, thou shalt not use pronouns? Is that, I don't, there's 10 commandments, right? Which commandment is that one? Is that like in a subtext or something under one of the commandments? Thou shalt not use pronouns? No, this is ridiculous. I must have missed it if it's in there somewhere. Now, they also, though, disagreed with some other, conservative positions, right? Apparently, they allow women in priesthood. Okay. And also had affirmed that racism exists. Wow. They said, we have significant work to do in healing the scars of racism in America. Well, I'll be. Wait a minute. You know what that sounds like? That sounds like critical race theory, which I'm sure they will get rid of it. Now, look, some of the alumni are pushing back against, again, this firing. These firings, nearly 600 of them have signed a petition in protest. Our overall concern, he says, is that these recent changes demonstrate a concerning pattern of failure on the part of the current administration to respect that faithful and active Christians reasonably hold a range of theological and ethical views. So basically, look, maybe we're all Christian here, but doesn't mean we all have to follow one specific, thing. It doesn't mean that we should hate gay people. Doesn't mean that we should hate trans people. Right. Now, University President Wayne D. Lewis Jr. replied to that letter and said, oh, no, see, the reason that we got rid of some of these things, like the multicultural thing and, all that is budgetary moves. Yes, budgetary moves. We had to save some money. We have a lack of enrollment and all that stuff. Well, gee, I wonder why. Now, Michael Blankenship, university spokesman, also said in a statement that Houghton had, quote, and you're going to love this, has never terminated an employment relationship based solely on the use of pronouns in staff email signatures. Well, I mean, that's what does it say in the Bible about lying? Because that seems like that's not true. Seems like it's a little bit of a lie there. Now, some of the responses here from individual people, again, who either are going to this university or have been at this university. One of them is Molly Connolly, a 21-year-old sophomore. She is a student member council who aspires to become a minister. So that's where she's at. She said that the administration's decisions had caused a lot of frustration for students who, she says, hold a wide range of political and religious beliefs. Quote, people felt it was political and did not align with some people's interpretation of what it means to be Christ-like, Ms. Connolly said. This has highlighted how divided people are about the politics and identity politics and how people understand gender and sexuality. Derek Schwabe, who is a former alumnus, he's an alumnus, he was a former student, who graduated back in 2012. He's also openly gay. He said the campus was never an affirming place, but said, look, hey, if you kept your head down as a gay person, you could survive. Now, he also said that back then, even though it wasn't really that affirming, it was a little bit better back then than it seems to be now. So it actually got worse. In fact, Schwabe thought the administration at the time had taken a more neutral approach to LGBTQ issues by allowing on-campus debates and other activities. He said, for students from conservative families like his own, those events could be revelatory. Quote, at the Houghton I knew, there was room for discussion and allowing differences of opinion. I was exposed to broader viewpoints on these issues than I had been exposed to before. I am sad to see even that level of openness has been curtailed. Well, look, sadly, guys, when it comes to the current right wing movement right now, they don't believe in debate. They don't believe in debate. They've lost these issues. They've lost the issue of civil rights. When it comes to same-sex marriage, when it comes to trans rights, the American people overwhelmingly choose freedom over hatred and bigotry. That's it. Which is why, of course, bigots have pushed back so hard and have been falsely accusing members of the LGBTQIA plus community and their allies of being groomers and pedophiles. You don't just come up with that. You can use that smear if you're winning the argument. No, you come out when you're desperate. You go, why do you like gay people? You know what they touch children. They're touching the kids. No, they're not. No, you don't have any proof of that. In fact, the vast majority of predators, pedophiles, are white cis males. And generally are in the churches or other positions of power. It's just patently untrue that the people that have right now the least amount of power are the predators. You're kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. But they do this because they don't have any arguments. Now, in interviews, Ms. Leah and Mr. Wilmot said that they believed that their dispute with the school boiled down to a difference of opinion on how to be a good Christian. Okay? So they said that they included their pronouns because they wanted to engage with society's downtrodden, as Christ might have done. I think that's a noble aim. Again, I'm not a religious person myself, but generally I think that, hey, if you're using your religion for good, then I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. You can believe whatever the hell you want. You can believe in the magical fairies in the sky. You can believe in the flying spaghetti monster, the giant colander. You can believe in all sorts of things that I don't believe in personally. That doesn't harm me at all. But when you use those beliefs to try to crush someone else, well, that's when it does harm people, and that's when I'm against it. I am for your freedom. I am for your freedom. I am for your First Amendment rights to believe whatever religion you want. And to live your life according to that, religious belief, if you so choose. You want to wear a headscarf? Wear a headscarf. I don't really give a damn. Doesn't harm me. Doesn't have any impact on my life, negative or otherwise. Do you? But when you start to use those beliefs, again, to try to take away people's civil rights, when you take away bodily autonomy for women, for example, women, along with, of course, trans men, or people who are intersex, anyone with a uterus, when you are curtailing their civil rights, their bodily autonomy, then yes, I have a problem. When you're going after trans people and vilifying them, when black trans women specifically are victimized the most, especially when they're made to go in the states that have passed bills that don't allow them to use the bathroom of their chosen gender. That's what happens. There's a lot of violence against the trans community, and it's because of bigoted attitudes. And this is not helping. Now, that said, let's go back to Ms. Zelaya, who said she thought, quote, she said she thought the firings were motivated by the university's decision to toe the right-wing party line and appeal to the conservatives' political beliefs that dominate the evangelical Christian world. Quote, we live in a very divided world right now where everything is this or that, right or left, conservative or liberal, Republican or Democrat. As Christians, I think we've gotten so caught up in these ideas of this is what I should be advocating for or upset about that we actually forget to care for people. Look, I agree that we should care for people. I mean, that's pretty simple. Sadly, there are too many, again, supposed conservative Christians that have shown that they don't care about people. They don't care about human beings. Their main intention is to own the libs. They'll go to church and they'll pray and they'll be like, oh, God, I'm honoring you in every single way. And I am the most holiest of holies. And then as soon as they are done with the church, they'll pass a homeless guy in the street, call him a bum, tell him to get a job. and they'll call him a bum. And this unhoused person who may have just fallen on tough times. Sometimes might even be a homeless veteran. You don't know. They don't care because they don't care about people anymore. And that's the issue. There are too many people out there that are also trying to deny people civil rights and the right to live their own lives. Now, overall, again, I like the message that some of these alumnus are saying, that, hey, you might not have to understand or necessarily really like what other people are doing, but you have to respect their rights. You know, you have to accept that people are going to live their lives, and that's okay. You have to, care for people as human beings, and that's it. As long as they're not harming anyone else, what's the problem? Again, as if you're a Christian person, you are not affected by a trans person getting gender affirming healthcare. You are not affected by somebody using pronouns. You're also really not affected if someone asks you to use pronouns. It literally takes like 2 seconds to learn which pronouns are correct. In fact, the thing that I see the most with transphobes right now is you kind of have to go out of your way to misgender someone. You have to kind of go out of your way to use the wrong pronouns. We see this happen with Ben Shapiro all the time, where he'll mess up and he'll say the right pronoun first and then go back and then uncorrect himself and then misgender this person on purpose. It takes more energy, more time and energy to be hateful. And so I'm glad there are people, Christians that are starting to understand that and say, hey, you know what? Maybe we don't have to be hateful. Turns out maybe we can be more like our Christ. And realizing that, the hatred that's coming from small section of people is just not worth it, and it's wrong.